Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Family Meeting.
Howdy.
That's not cool. I don't know why you said that, but don't do that again.
I'm entering my Western phase.
Yeah, I can tell by your shirt. You're way out of Texas. I don't know where she thinks she is. I know all of you who are in Texas are highly offended right now.
Sorry, y'all.
I'm offended for you. Y'all, what are you doing today? What is happening
I'm
here?
in a mood.
So, hope that you have had a great week. I got back yesterday from Florida Fire Chaplain Conference. Spent a couple days over there with our fire chief, Chief Tucker. Had a great time, learned a lot. So, excited to put that into practice here in Flagler County. And trying to think of what else we had going on. We went to Georgia this week.
Oh, yeah.
So, didn't see the devil, even though he supposedly went down there. But
we did hike Stone Mountain, which was awesome.
that was really fun.
Yeah. And it was completely cloudy and overcast up at the top, so we couldn't see anything from the top. But like 3/4 of the way up, it was clear, and so you could just see for miles and miles and all the treetops. It was very beautiful.
Yeah, so we went to visit our friends Matt and Madison, who are up there, and Matt's like, I've never hiked it, and it's like a few minutes from where their house is.
Yeah, but it was totally worth the time.
Great hike. In fact, we only had time to do the one hike, but there's a few hikes around there, so love to go back there sometime. It was a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. But it's finally getting to that point where we can be outside. I just loved it this morning. I got up, I went to the gym at 4:00 in the morning, just a t-shirt. It was nice and warm out.
Yes,
I love it.
It's really good. Like Florida weather is now
sunny
here.
Today. I've got a couple other podcast interviews today, but then hopefully going to hit the beach.
Nice.
Go to the beach, man, because it's sunny, warm, perfect. So, what are you guys up to this week? Hopefully you're having a great week. We have kind of a difficult conversation we're going to have today. We're going to be talking about addiction. Actually, it's going to be two-parter. Mm-hmm. So today we're going to talk about, you realize your spouse has an addiction. And then next week we're going to be talking about what do you do? You understand you have an addiction. So kind of coming at it from both perspectives. So it'll be a little heavier conversation today than some of the conversations we have, but I'm looking forward to jumping in to this because here's the thing. We're all addicted to something.
Agreed.
All of us are addicted to something. A lot of us are addicted to this right here. Mm-hmm. Our phones and social media and all of the stuff that go along with it. So I think there'll be something that each of us can walk away from trying to do better as people. So let's see. What else we got to talk about?
I think we should jump into the episode. We're ready.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Let's do it.
Gather round, everybody. It's time for a family meeting. The Family Meeting is a show that's all about family relationships. We're the Osterkamps. I'm Thomas, and this is my wife, Lysandra. You actually have that back in the notes.
Yeah, I realized it. Somehow it got out. And
That's been
I
on the notes for like 2 months.
I found it.
So it is Lysandra.
Hello and welcome to our family. Welcome to episode 237 of the Family Meeting Podcast. On today's episode, we're going to talk about addiction and the way it affects your marriage. We want to talk about this in a 2-part series. So we're going to have one episode this week, and next week we will have kind of the second half of this episode. This week, we want to really talk about what do you do when you realize your spouse has the addiction, because that can happen in marriages where you're like, okay, I just found out, or maybe I've been seeing signs and now I'm definitely sure my spouse has an addiction. Next week, we will look at what about when you are the one with the addiction and how this is affecting your marriage and what you need to do and what steps you need to take.
Before we jump into the conversation today, we are excited because coming up very soon, we are going to be back with our friends James and Amber Howell.
Yes.
And Heritage over in Byram, Mississippi for their couples retreat. If I'm remembering right off the top of my head, that's going to be the weekend of
May.
Let's see, Mother's Day's there, so it's going to be the 23rd, 24th. Is that right?
I think so.
Or it's the 30th.
Mine is off. My phone is off. So, whoopsie.
May 30th and 31st, I believe. I think so. Actually, let me just look it up.
So make your plans to attend possibly May 31st.
Yeah.
Listen, last year we went to Heritage Church and we enjoyed, so enjoyed our friends there. We got to know James and Amber and all of the people in their church. What they did is they rented out a section of a camp, and the food was fantastic. It wasn't like junk camp food. It was such good camp food. The friendship and the camaraderie was fantastic. We felt like instant friends with all these people. It was we just got a bunch of new best friends. And we've, of course, kept up with them through social media over this last year. So we're very excited to go back. And we'd love to welcome you and have you join us. If you are a listener who lives near Byram, Mississippi, come and join us on May
23rd through 25th.
That's official.
Yes.
May 23rd through 25th.
Yeah, so
make your plans.
Looking forward to that. Always a good time. We'd love all of our friends in the Southeast, well, from anywhere really, to be able to join us. And I think we'll have a good time together. We'll have information for how you can sign up for that on our social media. We've had a conversation, speaking of social media, conversation going on in our family meeting community group. And let's see, Chloe made a post. And it was, no Easter egg hunt for my kids this year. Go find my forks and spoons.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And she said, for real, though, where are the forks and spoons?
They disappear.
So we have this conversation taking place under here.
Well, because I think so many parents can relate. Everybody jumped on there and was like, yeah.
Yeah, Amanda jumps on and says, I've seen so many in the trash. And she's got the, face palm emoji there.
Yeah.
And Chloe's like, same. What? Just throwing them in the trash.
Yeah.
We're made out of money. I don't know what that's about. Are they using paper plates? And that's why they're finding them in the trash? Or paper bowls or something? Because you wouldn't just throw your other dishes in the trash. So maybe...
Or if they're scraping their plate, scraping extra food off their plate.
Maybe they're this has food on it. Throw it in the garbage. Christine says this, my sons would take our favorite glasses to their rooms and leave them there for days until mold would start growing in the bottom from leftover dribbles of milk.
Oh, man. At that point, just throw the glass away.
Yeah, that's gross. Yeah. Yeah,
that's hard to come back from. I don't want to clean that.
Throw that away. So our friend Chris says this, I ask this question daily, and then she says teenagers.
That's the problem.
So now we've got this conversation that's taking place because Chloe's like, no, because Chloe has small
younger
children.
Mm-hmm.
Small children's children.
Children.
And she says, no, I thought this was only because I have toddlers and I was hoping they would grow out of it. And Chris says, nope, I still look for my silverware on the daily. Right now, I can never find steak knives because they take them to their room to eat or open boxes. Which I use steak knives to open boxes also. Amazon stuff.
Me too.
Spoons and forks are always being bought here because they always magically disappear. It's almost a permanent item in my birthday and Christmas list for me.
That's so sad.
That is sad. I think you should give it to them.
Yeah.
Make it their birthday and Christmas present. You're the one who lost them or threw them away or left them under your bed or whatever else. And Lysandra, I think some of us know her, says, they do not grow out of it, !
They do not.
And then you made this comment, which I thought was funny and true. You said, they are wherever the single socks are.
Yes. Yeah, because when she
little,
said,
hands up, I don't know.
Yeah, because the question, the thing is, seriously, where are all the forks and spoons? They're with all those mismatched socks. I don't understand it. Where do they go? I do laundry. I don't, put socks in weird places.
Yeah, and they're just gone. And Kim chimes in and says, and plastic container lids.
Yeah.
So then Chris says, lids? I have a giant box of lids. I can't find the containers they go to.
Kim and Chris should get together.
Exactly. Yeah,
Maybe
just do
some
a
of the
swapsies.
lids will
Yeah.
fit their containers.
I'll give you some lids, you give me some containers, but that's true life mom problems.
Yeah, it is.
There.
For real. Yeah, it's too funny.
It is funny how things just kind of disappear.
Yeah, but you know what I always am kind of hit by whenever I see these conversations on Family Meeting Community is that we're all dealing with the same stuff.
Oh, yeah.
We're all facing the same stuff. And sometimes you're frustrated and you feel like my family's the only one who does this stupid thing. And then no, everybody's frustrated with that in their own house.
And kids be kids. It doesn't matter if they're toddlers or teenagers. Like, it's the same things that are taking place in all the houses.
Until they buy the silverware.
Oh, yeah. They don't care.
They don't care.
They don't care at all. They're just like, oh, we always have these. And they magically reappear in the drawer. So we just must have a plethora of them. Like they just magically replenish, even if I throw them in the garbage.
Right. Exactly. All right, guys, we are going to get into our discussion today. And just to warn you, this is going to be a heavier topic. We try to keep things lighthearted around here, but in order to have good family relationships, which is our goal for us and for you, we have to talk about some uncomfortable subjects sometimes. And today is one of those kind of uncomfortable discussions, and that is about addiction. And Thomas was telling our YouTube viewers before we jumped into the recording that ultimately we're all addicted to something.
Yeah. I mean,
we all have an addiction.
Whether it is your phones, you're addicted to food, caffeine. Some of us are addicted to social media and getting likes and follows and all of that stuff. For some, it might be drugs or alcohol or tobacco of some form, pornography, sexual addictions. We are honestly all dealing with something. So for us to just say, well, this doesn't apply to me or my house is totally not true. It would be very naive to think that, first of all, if somebody's truly addicted to something, especially something like real negative, that we would look at as shameful behavior, they get pretty good at hiding it. So you may not even know that it's taking place for a very long time. You may see signs and just like shove it off as like, no, it can't be that. It's got to be something else. Like, so we're all addicted to something. So before we start pointing fingers and all of that, we need to take a long, hard look in the mirror. And we are, as Lysandra mentioned, we're going to talk about you dealing with your own addictions next week. But what do we do now? Like, okay, my spouse is addicted.
Yeah. So before we can even really get to that point, first we have to understand what addiction is. And
so here we come to Lysandra's favorite part of every episode we do on something, where it's
Webster's Dictionary defines addiction as...
Yeah. So we literally just lost all of our listeners. All of our viewers on YouTube are like, next video, please.
There are type A people out there who cannot wait to hear the actual definition of addiction.
I'm a type A personality. I don't care what the definition of things are.
Okay, then there are people like me who do care. I wish that somebody would just stand up for me once in a while. If you guys could please message in, put it under the comments on the episode, on YouTube, wherever. Tell him that you appreciate the definitions. It helps you to understand the issue better. Please.
All right, so we let Lysandra take over the definition.
Also, once you know the definition... And this is the goal when we talk about addiction, before we actually talk about like what to do if your spouse has addiction, you have to understand what addiction is, because you may not know your spouse has an addiction.
Yes.
But once you understand what it fully is, you can spot it.
I agree it can be helpful. I just find it funny how much you enjoy the dictionary.
Love the dictionary. Okay. All right, here we go. I know everybody's so excited. Addiction is generally defined as chronic, compulsive dependence on a substance or behavior, characterized by the inability to control or stop the use of that substance or engagement in that behavior, despite negative consequences. It involves both physical and psychological factors and can have a significant impact on a person's life, including their health, relationships, and daily functioning. That is what addiction is.
Yeah, and the bottom line is, we're going to get into all of this. The bottom line is, for those of you who, have somebody in your family struggling, or maybe you're struggling, most of the time you're not going to be able to overcome this addiction by yourself.
Right.
So you're going to need some help, and we'll get into all of that. But before we do that, I want you to think about the fact that there are two primary types of addictions. So, first of all, there is substance addiction, where your dependence is on substances like drugs, alcohol, nicotine, caffeine, food, those sorts of things, where a person feels the need to use the substance regularly, often leading to tolerance, withdrawal symptoms, loss of control.
Okay.
Those of you, so let's just take caffeine for a second. Those of you who have addiction to caffeine and you don't use it and you start to get the headaches, right? So
right.
That's a sign that you have a dependence on that particular drug. Now,
substance.
Caffeine is a drug. So, it is funny though how we look at certain things and it's like, okay, and I'm not casting stones because I also enjoy my own caffeine, but we look at certain substance like it's okay to be addicted to that. It's kind of a joke, but something else.
Yeah. Like funny coffee addiction memes, and they're all over the place, but nobody has like goofy alcoholism addiction memes because that's not quite as funny. Like that one's not accepted.
Consequences are different.
They are different.
On two,
Absolutely.
You might lose your house buying Starbucks every other day or every day, but
yeah. But addiction is addiction, right? So, okay, so that's the first type of addiction. The second type of addiction is behavioral addiction. And this is compulsive engagement in certain behaviors. Could be things like gambling, pornography, gaming, shopping, or social media, other kinds of internet use and whatnot. And this can all be behaviors that cause significant disruption to daily life and well-being. So it's similar to substance addiction in that, like, it's going to cause you problems. It's going to have an effect on you and on your family and on your relationships, but it's not on a substance. It's an addiction to a certain kind of a behavior.
And what's interesting, though, is you kind of read off that list, not everything in that list is wrong in and of itself. Now, certain things like we're followers of Jesus, and so pornography, we know, is just wrong. Like, it should not be a part of our lives, should not be a part of our marriages. So there's certain things where it's like, okay, that's definitely wrong no matter what. But some of the stuff, it's like, it's not wrong in and of itself.
Yeah.
Like
video games,
playing cards with your friends, right? That's not necessarily wrong in and of itself. Gaming, going shopping, using the internet,
social media,
all this stuff is not wrong in and of itself, but it can move into that behavioral addiction that affects your family, and then therefore it does become an issue.
Yeah, and I think that what I left off this list mistakenly is also sex addiction, which is different than a pornography addiction.
Yeah.
And sex in and of itself is not wrong if it is done in the proper boundaries of marriage between a man and wife. But, of course, oftentimes with a sex addiction, it has much far-reaching problems, and it goes outside of the bounds of marriage.
But the thing about addiction is it becomes so powerful in our lives because it involves the brain's reward system.
Right.
So your brain rewards you for certain types of behavior and hits you with dopamine and other things that are taking place in your brain. So they provide feelings of pleasure or relief and then reinforce the cycle of continued use despite the negative impacts. Mm-hmm. So you're constantly looking for that next hit in your mind that may have nothing to do with a chemical or a drug or anything else. It's like, when I am involved in this behavior, this certain thing clicks in my mind, and your mind says, I like that. Keep doing that. Do that again. Seek out that thing. And so that's why it's so powerful, though, because it's literally something that's going on in your chemical reaction in your mind that rewires and reworks your brain.
Right. And we talk very in depth about that on our episode on pornography that we did quite a ways back. But that's basically what we talk about on there, about the rewiring of the brain. It's really a fascinating thing. We are an amazing creation created by a good God.
Yes. And here's the thing, even though we may have through addiction rewired our brain, there is the ability to rewire it.
Yeah. Yeah. If it can be rewired, then it can be rewired again.
Yes.
Yes.
However you would say that. Rewired.
Unrewired?
Yeah. No. I don't know.
That's wrong. But addiction, whether it's to a substance, behavior, or activity, it typically involves a combination of physical, emotional, and psychological factors. So how do you know if your spouse is addicted to something? So we've defined addiction. We've talked about the two forms, substance and behavior. Now, how do you know if your spouse is addicted to something? And I think that this is a great question because, I'm just going to use our relationship, okay? I have occasionally been concerned about my husband's use of his phone.
Yeah, okay.
And I have more than once thought to myself, at what point is this an addiction? And at what point is this just maybe he's on it too much? Now, he could 110% turn the finger on me and be like, you're on your phone all the time. And I totally am. Then of course my next question is am I addicted to my phone?
But it's a great illustration for what we're going to be talking about. So whether it's phones or alcohol or pornography or whatever, you're looking for these symptoms of, okay, is this just in my mind, or may this truly be an addiction in my spouse's life?
Because you want to know that. You want to know the answer to that question before you approach your spouse.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the symptoms, one of the kind of red flags would be loss of control. Okay. So your spouse finds it difficult to stop or limit the behavior, even if they want to. They may try to cut back and fail repeatedly. So this would be if Thomas came to me and was like, I'm only going to be on my phone for 3 hours a day. And then he can't do it no matter how hard he tries and whatnot.
What's funny is some people are like, 3 hours a day, that's a lot. And some people are like, whoa, how could someone only use their phone 3 hours a day?
Yeah, I couldn't, because my phone is where I message clients. I follow leads. I, answer emails, my calendar's there, my list is there. Oftentimes I write on my phone. I will write a podcast episode on the notes page of my phone. So my work is completely entangled into my phone usage. And now I've discovered the beauty of reading for pleasure.
Yeah.
And so now I'm on my phone at the beach reading my books.
Yeah. And so you're carrying around this supercomputer in your pocket all the time.
It's not that just because you're on your phone, you're always automatically wasting time.
Right.
That is not the case. You may be working, you may be, for instance, at the gym, I've got my audiobook on that's playing books that are helping with either my own spiritual growth or my ministry or my professional life. So it's valuable, but yeah, technically I'm on my phone at the gym for an hour. You gonna let that one go?
I'll let it go this time.
I thought for sure he's going to be like, you mean 15 minutes? But anyway, so loss of control. Can they, if they're trying to limit the amount of time they use something, whether it's the substance abuse or the behavior, can they do it? They can, or they can't do it, and then you realize.
Right, you can't just have one drink.
Yeah.
You open it up and you have the whole bottle.
Right.
Or
you drink till you're drunk, and that's... You
can't go a day without having a glass of wine, so they've lost that control over whatever it is, whether it's a substance or a behavior. So another thing to stop and to consider, the sign that you're looking for, whether or not your spouse is addicted, is preoccupation. So they think about the activity or substance often, and it occupies their mind even when they're doing other things. So, you might be having a family day and their mind is thinking all about getting home and hopping on that video game.
Right. Or maybe it's the sex addiction. Like they're at work all day, but all they can think about is like that next fix.
So with that might be a little different. It'll be harder probably to tell that unless it's like they're talking about it, they're texting about it, they're whatever about it. So they might literally plan your day around it.
Yeah. Right.
And this addiction now starts to interfere with daily life,
right,
affecting work, school, relationships, or even their own personal health. And what'll start to happen is they'll start to neglect responsibilities or even avoid important tasks. So, and it can eventually get severe enough where it's like this hinders you enough where you end up getting fired,
right,
for your job. And I think last week you mentioned the book Worthy of Her Trust. And so in the book, he talks about the fact that his sex addiction, just completely overtook every part of his life to where he got fired from multiple jobs because that's all he could think about, all he could, concentrate on.
Well, and that part there where you said that the person maybe even plans their day around it, that made me think of food addiction. Where like, because food addiction is widely accepted in our culture.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm going to be honest, this is definitely the one that hits home for me. I definitely like a coffee every morning, but I would not say that I'm addicted. Like, I can stop anytime I want.
Every addict says that. That's like their motto. They like put their hand to their heart and say, I can stop anytime I want.
Yeah. And then they drink a cup of coffee. I mean, I guess I don't know if I could stop. I haven't really tried.
Okay, so let's do this. Let's test.
I don't want to.
Let's test this out.
I don't want to.
For a week, you just don't have any coffee.
I don't want to do
and
that.
Then we'll come see that you're an addict.
No, an addict wants to get off of it and can't. I have no desire to stop.
No. So let's do it. Let's, in between now and the next podcast, let's just say no coffee. And I won't have coffee. You don't have coffee. And then...
Well, you don't even like coffee.
That's not the point. The point is whether or not we're addicted to coffee.
Okay.
Now, so do you accept the challenge?
The challenge is to try not to. No, I don't even try. I don't accept the challenge to try not to.
Okay.
I don't want to try not to. I want to have my cup of coffee in the morning with my daughters. Okay? It's happening.
You have a cup of hot water instead.
My mom does that. My mom drinks hot water instead of coffee to try to like not drink as much coffee. But I don't drink coffee all day long. I have one cup in the morning, and then if I have a coffee meeting with a woman,
sounds to me like you're trying to defend
second.
your behavior.
I'm actually trying to talk about my food addiction right now.
Okay.
but I was just mentioning like, yeah, coffee maybe is an issue too, but food addiction is my actual issue.
What I find funny though is you are willing to give up food for a week, but you won't give up coffee for a week.
Okay. You got me.
Yeah. So
Well, I'm not going to give up food and coffee at the same time.
Okay.
Okay. What?
So your
Food
food
addiction.
addiction. Yeah, let's hear about it.
Okay. Food addiction is widely accepted in our culture, and it's even become very normal, and it's a big joke. But the truth is that we do sometimes like plan our day around what food we can get.
Well, I think most people do that. I mean, a lot of people do that.
A lot of people. And but that, that kind of makes me think like how much of this is an addiction. And we're always thinking about the next meal and where can I get my next hit, so to speak.
But it's not necessarily just people who are eating poorly or overeating. I've seen this happen with people who are like hyper focused on their health as well.
Yes.
And so they're over concentrating on how many their macros, how much protein is in this, how many carbs, and they're like that's so fixated on it. So it's not necessarily just we're talking about you hitting the drive-thru at McDonald's every day on your way home from work. It could run the complete opposite way as far as health also.
Yes, and that makes me think of addiction to exercise as well, which can be become an issue.
It can definitely. I love going to the gym. I love lifting weights. It makes me feel good. It does hit that reward center that we talked about. I miss the gym when I can't go, but it doesn't. I don't think it's gotten to a point where it's like my whole day's ruined if I can't go to the gym. But,
No, it hasn't.
But it definitely can become an addiction.
That's right. All right, here's another kind of symptom and red flag that you can look for, and that is tolerance. Because over time, you're going to see that your spouse needs more of the substance or more of the activity to achieve that same effect. So like oftentimes, I think a pornography addiction is maybe a simple way to illustrate this. That is where someone may begin with a soft core pornography that isn't too much, not too, how shall I say, raunchy or whatever, extreme.
Explicit.
Thank you. Raunchy is like a 90s word.
Yeah.
Okay. And eventually that does it for them for a while, but eventually they need a little bit more to get that same hit. So then they're going to go a little bit darker or a little deeper or a little more explicit. And it has to continuously get worse and worse and worse, or more and more and more often. And you're seeing more in order to get that same hit that you were at the beginning when it was just a little bit here and there. So you develop a tolerance. And what that does is it leads to an increase in the behavior or the consumption. Also, the other side is the withdrawal. And we talked about that with coffee, like the coffee headaches, the caffeine headaches. But when they try to stop, they try to cut back, they experience uncomfortable physical or emotional symptoms, or maybe both at the same time. Irritability would be an emotional symptom. Anxiety. The physical symptoms could be more like physical cravings, like their body has a visceral reaction to not having the thing. So this could be like the headaches from a caffeine withdrawal. And there are a lot of different kinds of physical things that happen when people go through withdrawal from drugs and alcohol and things like that.
Another symptom is continued use despite harm.
Yeah.
So even when they know it's causing harm, like negative effects on their health, on their marriage, other family relationships, negative effects on finances, they continue engaging in the behavior or using the substance. So it's like we mentioned finances there. Like I'm addicted to shopping, whether it's scrolling through Amazon or, Shein and all the whatever things.
Temu or whatever it's called. I don't even know how to say it right.
Yeah.
Or going to the stores and touching the fabric and hunting through the shelves.
Like you can't walk out of Target without getting, stuff that wasn't even remotely on your list. But it's like, okay, I know this is affecting our family financially in a negative way. We don't have the money for this, and we keep putting ourselves in this situation. That is a sign that somebody has an addiction. Like for whatever reason, they're either using that for a coping mechanism because of something else, trauma or whatever else has happened in their life. But this addiction has formed, and even though it's causing negative impact, drinking way too much has a serious effect on your liver, and you just keep on doing it. Mm-hmm. Like smoking cigarettes destroys your lungs, is going to give you cancer, but you just keep on. And, it's just, I can't stop, even though I know it's harmed me.
Right.
Another thing that goes on is they have a loss of interest in other activities. So things they used to enjoy might no longer feel as rewarding or satisfying because they're focused on the addictive behavior. So you used to love to get together with friends and play games and whatever else. But now I'm not interested because I'm so hyper-focused on this video game and what's going on in this world that I don't have the desire to get together in person with these people anymore. Mm-hmm. So whatever it is, it's starting to affect, the other things going on in your life.
Yeah, and this kind of goes along with that too, and that is compulsive use. Okay, so your spouse feels a strong urge, or it becomes a compulsion to engage in that behavior or to get that substance, even when they don't really want to. And so that's another sign. And maybe you've noticed some of these signs. Maybe like as we've been reading these off, you're like, oh man, I see that in my spouse. Ooh, I see that in that. I see that with that thing. And maybe this has all added up to where you feel like, okay, it's official. I can say it pretty confidently. I believe my spouse is addicted to fill in the blank. So maybe that's where you're at right now. What do you do? What's your next step? And as you have seen these things, it might be worth reflecting on the issue more seriously, really think about it, okay? Take some time to pray about it and stuff. And if you are concerned, one of the first things that you can do is speak to a mental health professional. Get a counselor who really fully understands this, and you want to encourage your spouse eventually to get to the point where they would go and seek guidance as well from a mental health professional, because that's really what you need to break these cycles that you've gotten yourself into with addiction. You need outside help, and they can help you to understand whether you're dealing with an addiction or not, or maybe it really isn't an addiction, it's something else, but they're going to help you to know what steps to take.
So also, if you want to kind of dive into some things and just do a little bit of easy reading that can give you some helpful information, June Hunt has a series of books that are just absolutely fascinating. And some of them are on addiction. So like, for instance, she's got one on alcohol and drug abuse. She's got one on sexual addiction. She has one on habits and addictions, and just talking about, self-control and all of that.
I think, is there one on overeating too? I was thinking, I feel like I read that one.
Possibly. I just looked it up
Food
real
addiction,
quick to see what was available. But part of that process is just educating yourself.
Right.
And so one of the things that you can do is just dive into the subject about yourself. Just learn about the addiction your spouse is facing. So if you say, you know what, my spouse is having trouble with food. All right. So just taking a little time, and there are so many resources out there now.
Yeah.
That are available to you. And you can literally just Google it, go to ChatGPT or whatever, and say, give me a list of the top 10 audiobooks on food addiction.
Yep.
And it'll pop out a whole list for you and give you all kind of information and research. So you can dive into it yourself. But understanding the nature of the addiction, its symptoms, and potential treatment options can help you respond effectively as you begin to have this conversation with your spouse. I think that also knowing more about the addiction can help you avoid judgment or frustration when dealing with your spouse's behavior. Because yes, they are doing things that are harmful to themselves, harmful to you, your relationship, your family. But addiction is a very serious and powerful thing that it has definitely started with some decisions that they've made. But it can quickly move beyond where they literally have lost control.
Right.
Now, are they still responsible? Absolutely. But I think having a little more understanding of what all this addiction entails will help you be a little more understanding as you have that conversation. And that kind of leads us to our next suggestion.
Yeah, which is talking to them openly and non-judgmentally, because it is easy to judge an addict.
Yeah, that second part I think is vitally important on how successful the conversation is going to be. That non-judgmental part. Right.
If you walk into confronting your spouse about this with this attitude I'm better than you because I don't have the same problem, well, you're not going to get anywhere, first of all. You're not going to help your spouse. You're not going to encourage your marriage or save your marriage. Because here's the deal. Your spouse knows it, and at your heart, you know it. You have your own problems.
True.
You've got your own stuff that you're dealing with. You have your own addictions or bad behaviors or whatever else. So don't go into this judgmentally. Don't go in thinking with this attitude I'm better than them and I'm going to fix them. That's not going to help you or them. So rather, you're going to choose a calm, a private moment to express your concerns. Make sure that, certainly don't do it in public, certainly not in front of your children. Don't do it when they just got home from work and they're exhausted. Give them a moment.
So when we actually get down to the family meeting idea for this week's episode, I will give you a great way to begin the conversation in the least threatening way possible.
Okay.
So I'll just kind of throw that teaser out there as we continue this conversation, but I'm going to give you the exact way you can start this conversation.
I love it. Great. But when you do approach the conversation with your spouse, you're going to want to come in at it with empathy. And maybe right now you don't have empathy. Your empathy is gone. It's used up. It's out. Because when you have a spouse who is an addict, it is exhausting for you. Maybe you've had a conversation several times. Maybe you have tried to help them to quit or to stop or to control it more. And you don't really have compassion for them anymore. You're just tired of it. You're fed up. You're at the end of your rope. Well, then it is time to pray, and ask the Lord to change your heart and bring back that love, bring back the compassion, bring back the empathy, and be able to help your spouse without judging them or condemning them. And one way that you can start the conversation is using I feel statements, which is how we recommend you begin any important discussion with your spouse, especially if it's a discussion that's maybe going to lead to a fight. You're going to want to use I feel statements, all right? And talk about how the situation makes you feel. I feel like this behavior of yours is affecting our family. I feel like you're not as engaged with the kids. I feel like this is affecting your work life, okay? You're not saying, you're ruining our family, you're ruining our marriage, you're ruining the kids. No, that's not going to help you.
Now, that might be true.
It might all be true.
But that's not going to lead to a productive conversation.
Exactly. You might say things like, I'm very concerned about your health with this situation. And that might be a food conversation, right? I'm very concerned about your health. Or I'm very concerned about how this is affecting us and it's affecting our relationship.
Yeah. And so like somebody who's addicted to work, they're addicted to the job. Hey, I'm concerned how this behavior is affecting our relationship, affecting your relationship with the kids, and so great way to start that conversation.
Right. And you're going to avoid any blaming or criticizing because that's not going to get you anywhere. What that's going to do is put your spouse immediately on the defensive, or they're going to just shut down altogether. So don't blame, don't criticize. You're coming at this with empathy, God-given, Spirit-led empathy, because you can't do empathy on your own. You really need him. You need his help to do that. You need his help to do this without judgment, but come at it without the blaming, without the criticizing, with the love. Speak the truth in love. We hold tight to that scripture. Speak the truth in love and get the discussion started.
And one of the things that we want to encourage you to do is to encourage them to seek professional help. Mm-hmm. As we mentioned early in the episode, most addictions, I would say almost all addictions, are not going to be overcome with you just on your own or them just on their own deciding, I'm going to drop this thing. Now, it does happen.
It does happen. I also think it's dangerous for you as their spouse to be the only one helping them through an addiction. Because then you become the crutch, or you become the bad guy, or you become the person who has to have all the accountability for them. And that is an unfair pressure for them to put on you.
Yeah, and that can very quickly negatively impact your marriage relationship. And you can even offer to go with them. Yeah. Like, hey, I'm going to walk with you through this process. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to be your source of strength and hope, but I'm going to help you walk through this. And then what you have to do is you have to do whatever it takes to support them in going to get help. Yeah. So that may mean rearranging your schedule.
Yeah, driving them to and from.
So
setting up the appointment.
Yeah.
If Thomas was going to go get professional help for anything, he would have me find the doctor, pick the doctor, call the doctor, fill out the paperwork.
Yeah.
He's not going to do any of that himself.
I wouldn't do that for anything.
For anything.
So I definitely wouldn't do it for that purpose either.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying is like, you might have to do literally whatever it takes to support them in going to get the help.
Spirituality and faith is a key component, I think, in helping to overcome this as well.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about professional help, we encourage you finding a good counselor who they specialize in addiction. So I'll just say this, like, I am a pastor, and I think that you should have your pastor's help in this as far as, like, you should be faithful to church. You should get involved in the connection groups, small groups, whatever your church calls it or whatever else, and have that spiritual guide in your life, spiritual mentor and help. But I am not an addictions counselor.
You're not an addiction specialist.
And so most pastors are not. So nothing wrong with talking to your pastor about it and getting help that way. And I think that you should.
Right.
But I think you need to find a licensed professional counselor who addiction is what they do. And your pastor may be able to help you find that person. If they can't, once again, there's plenty of ways that you can find an addictions counselor. A simple Google search for, like, sex addiction counselor or something like that. I know, like, for gambling, they literally have 1-800-BETS-OFF, and you can call them and they can help you find a professional counselor. So if you don't know where to turn, I would say talk to your pastor, and then make sure you're finding that professional counselor.
One thing that I think is so cool about the world we live in now is, even if you don't have a great Christian counselor in your area, you can do online counseling. Like, you can do counseling through a Zoom call. Like, your counselor can be anywhere in the world and you can still meet with them, which is so great. It just opens up all the doors, because you think about people who are in rural communities, they don't have a lot of options maybe, or maybe even in, urban areas, and you just don't know where to turn. But that's one thing that's awesome, is no matter what, no matter who you are, no matter where you are, you can find a counselor and you can have access to it, which is really cool.
So you're looking for a professional counselor where you can get therapy and you can get counseling. I think, the spiritual aspect as well is, hey, make sure you are going to church and you make that part of your routine and you're involved in what your church is doing. And then finding support groups for that.
Yeah, which can be like a family support group.
The great thing is, like, whether that is like AA, if you're struggling with alcohol or whatever else, there's sex addiction group. There's, like, so many things out there now to help specifically with whatever it is that you or your spouse are dealing with. And I love that about the day and time that we live in is, there's so many problems out there, but there's so much help out there.
Right.
You just have to go out and seek it out.
That's right.
You're going to be the part that's going to encourage them, however that looks like, because they may need to go to a meeting every single day. Well, are you going to support that? If you want to see them change and learn and grow, then you're going to have to figure that out into your schedule.
Mm-hmm. And while you do want to support your spouse and you want to help any way you can, this is the other thing you have to think about, is you have to set boundaries for yourself. This is really protecting your own emotional and mental health. You've got to take care of your emotional health. You've got to take care of your mental health. And setting clear boundaries is going to help that. So you're going to set boundaries about what behaviors are acceptable and which behaviors are not. All right. For example, if your spouse's addiction is affecting your own well-being or safety, you may need to set limits on the behaviors. Okay. Like, you're not enabling their addiction or tolerating the destructive actions. So, a pornography addiction, if your spouse has a pornography addiction, you're going to set boundaries and you're going to say, listen, if you are going to engage in pornography, then I'm not going to be with you. Like, I'm not going to stay in this house and be an outlet for you after you look at pornography. Like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to partake in that. So you may even have to set boundaries. Like, if this happens, then this happens, or whatever their addiction may be.
Yeah. So, if your spouse is addicted to alcohol and they're just over consuming and that leads to poor behavior, like, listen, I'm not going to stay here, or you're not going to stay here.
Right.
If you're going to continue to drink. It's like something's going to change and they've got to feel some repercussions for their actions. But setting those healthy boundaries is so important. And I can't say the word boundaries without recommending the book. Yeah. It's just so fascinating. It's so helpful. But here's the thing. We talked about helping your spouse get help and support for their addiction, but you're going to need some help also, because dealing with a spouse's addiction can be emotionally draining.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So right. I want you to strongly consider seeking support from a counselor or a therapist to help you navigate your own feelings and make decisions that are best for you and your relationship. And so there are great counselors out there for that. I know there's people in your church, your pastor and others who would support you and encourage you through that. There are groups like Al-Anon.
I had never heard of this group until I knew a lady who was attending Al-Anon, and it was helping her deal with her husband's alcoholism.
Yeah, and so that's kind of the Al in that. There's also Nar-Anon for families of loved ones who are dealing with drug addiction. So they can help to provide comfort and guidance. You can find people who are walking the same path you walk, or they've already walked through it, and they can say, hey, we know it's hard, we know it's tough, but we can help encourage you and walk you through the process so that you're not dealing with this alone. It's a lot to bear. It's a lot to deal with, and you're going to need that encouragement and support. And so you may be listening to this right now and you feel exhausted and you feel tired because you've been dealing with it. You don't have to deal with it alone.
Right.
So have the courage to step out and find the help that you personally need, even though it's not your addiction. It's not your struggle, but you're struggling because of what the choices that your spouse has made. And you can find the help and support that you need.
That's right. And you do have to take care of yourself. Part of taking care of yourself may be the family support groups. It may be going to counseling yourself or setting the boundaries and all of those different things. Those are all important. Because what you have to realize is that supporting a loved one through addiction is exhausting, and it's going to affect you. And we've seen it before where a spouse who is married to someone who has an addiction, they start to focus so much on that issue that pretty soon they're not eating well, they're not exercising, they're not sleeping, they're not showering. They just can't even take care of themselves. So make sure that you are taking time to care for yourself. You cannot care for your children and you cannot care for your spouse unless you are taking care of your own health. So find your support system of friends or families or professionals or whatever it may be. This is where it's so good to find someone who's gone through it before, maybe somebody who's a few years ahead of you in the process, and they can point out these things to you and they can see it sometimes where you can't, and you can't see that, oh yeah, I guess I haven't been eating well, or I guess I haven't slept well and now I'm all irritable and angry all the time, or whatever it may be. So find some help from loved ones. Make sure you're taking care of yourself as well.
And here's the thing, you have to be prepared for resistance.
Yeah.
Most likely the first time you have this conversation, it's probably not going to go well. They're probably not going to admit it. They are going to resist help. They're going to deny there's a problem.
Right.
Often addiction involves denial. So they may not be ready to face the issue.
Yeah, it might take time.
You've got to be patient. But it's also important that you be clear about the consequences of their behavior, including how it affects you and the relationship. The book Boundaries we just mentioned a little while ago has something to say about that. And I think there's other resources as well that can help you, walk through this.
Yeah. And this is the last thing we're going to say, and then we're going to wrap up. But it may come down to the point that your spouse is unwilling to seek help and they refuse to even work on changing their behavior. Now, if your spouse is trying their very best to try to change this behavior, they're trying so hard to get off of the prescription medication or the cigarette use or the alcohol use or the sex addiction or the social media or whatever it is, they're trying and they're failing, but they're trying. That is very different than somebody who says, absolutely not, I'm not even going to try. For instance, me and my coffee.
Exactly.
I'm not even trying to get off coffee. I'm not even trying to not have my cup in the morning. That is a very different person than the person who says, I'm trying to get off coffee, but every once in a while I have a cup, I'm failing. It's a different scenario. So you have to understand that if your spouse is unwilling, they dig their heels in, they say, I'm not stopping. You can't make me stop. I have no desire to stop. They continue the behavior and it's going to harm you and your family. Then you might have to consider more drastic steps along those lines with boundaries, that if you, then I will. So what are those boundaries that you need to set? And then figure out okay, if they're not going to change, they refuse to change. Is this a situation where now I need to maybe go after a temporary separation? Maybe they need to leave and work on it. And if they're not going to work on it, then they can stay out of this house. You have to protect your children and you have to protect yourself.
Or you may need to have to leave because
depending on your situation. You
can't necessarily force them out of the house,
right?
But you may have to
leave yourself or take the kids and go.
Yeah.
And if this is you and this is where you are at, or you may find yourself there eventually, I hope not, but the book Enough is Enough by Dr. Clark is fantastic. It really helped me to understand some things about this.
Well, and the great thing about the book is it helps you develop a detailed plan, because for most of us, it's like, well, I wouldn't even know where to start with this.
Yeah.
It's such a scary thing to step out on our own or to, have to make a change. What do I do?
I have no money. I have nowhere to go.
So Dr. Clark will walk you through how to make a specific plan. And the thing that I appreciate about Dr. Clark is the focus for Dr. Clark is reconciliation if possible.
Right. That's the goal first.
That's where it starts, is we want to reconcile this. And so this is the plan and the steps we're going to follow in order to do that. And hopefully that's what it can come to, and it may not. And it also talks about that in there. But the key focus is on restoring the relationship.
Which is what we want to encourage you with as well. That's what we want to see for your family. We want to see your family restored. We want to see you free and your spouse free of addictions. This is just, if it gets to that point where it can't. But here's the bottom line: is addiction is complex, and it's a very painful issue. It affects so many aspects of our lives.
Yeah.
But go ahead and take that action. Speak the truth in love, compassion, empathy. Seek the right support, get the right help, and you and your spouse can work toward recovery. You can also protect your own well-being at the same time. But there are steps that you can take, and it can be okay, and you can get through this with your spouse and with the Lord's help.
So, family meeting tonight, I told you I'm going to give you the perfect way to begin this conversation in the most non-threatening way possible. And so here's what you're going to do. You're going to sit down with your spouse tonight, and you're going to say, hey, I was listening to this podcast, and they were talking about marriage and addiction, and I just want to ask you if there's anything in my life that you'd say is an addiction for me. So you're not starting by pointing at them or even accusing them or talking about what they're dealing with. You're opening up your own heart, which takes some vulnerability, right? You're looking at me first. And of course, we know that for most of us in social settings, in conversations, when you ask them to look at you, obviously the next thing we're going to do is turn around and have the conversation with them.
Reciprocation.
And so in the least threatening way possible, you're going to begin to have this conversation. That doesn't mean the conversation is going to go the way you hope it does, right? Because as we mentioned, somebody who's really struggling with addiction often will do anything to hide it and anything to deny the fact they have this addiction. That's part of what's going on in their brain, that self-preservation. But this will give you the easiest way in to have that conversation. And listen, we're praying for you as you have these conversations. Yes. Many of you we don't know, we'll never meet, we'll never talk to. You can reach out to us.
Yes.
You can send us an email. You can text us. We give you all that information. And you say, you know what? I can't seem to get any help from my pastor or somebody around us. If you shoot us a message, we will do our best to help you find some professional counselors. We're not professional counselors in that area, so we won't be the counselors. We can be a listening ear, and we will help you be able to find the professional counselors and support that you need for what you or your spouse are going through.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for joining us today. Please go and subscribe to the Family Meeting Podcast from your favorite podcast provider. And if you found this information helpful, please share this episode on social media and invite your friends and family to listen with you.
To find more content and information Lysandra and I provide, you can go to our website, familymeeting.org. And here's that email that I was just talking about a moment ago, info@familymeeting.org, or you can text us or leave a voice message at 904-257-3062.
And we want to invite you to join us for our next family meeting. We're going to look at part 2 in the addiction and how it affects your marriage. And next week, we're going to look at it from the other side. What if all this information that was shared today makes you realize it's you? You're the one with the addiction. What do you do next? How do you talk to your spouse about your own addiction? We're going to talk about that next week.
Thanks for joining us today for this family meeting. Have a great week, everybody. This meeting is adjourned.
Heavy topic.
Very heavy topic today. It can be very difficult. Some of you who are watching have kind of walked through this situation and scenario, and I think that you can be a great help and a great resource to others. So if you put in the comments some things that were helpful for you, like these are the things that helped me walk through this situation where I was able to find victory, or my spouse was able to find victory over addiction. Or you say, you know what, these are some missteps that we made, and we want to encourage you and help you not to make the same mistakes that we made.
Yeah.
But you can be such a help to the community by just putting in the comments and putting your life out there.
Yeah.
You have so much value to add, and in ways that we can't even add. And so we love to have that conversation with you right there in the comments. And with that, we'll see you for part 2 next time.
Bye-bye.